Welcome to the Sublime Woman Summit, a summit about being a woman now, free, embodied, aware. This virtual summit brings together women who have a unique and powerful opinion on different aspects related to 21st century womanhood. I am your host, Lynn S. I am a pleasure and love coach. I fearlessly guide women into sublime lives filled with pleasure and joy. And today I am joined by Alison Armstrong. Alison Armstrong's exploration of human behavior began in 1991 with her decision to study men, to find out how I was bringing out the worst in them and hopefully how to bring out the best, unquote. Her success in understanding men naturally led to studying women's behavior and making vital connections between the two. Alison distinguishes human instincts that compel both men and women to behave in ways that contradict and undermine their own purposes, goals, values, needs, and relationships. She offers partnership-based alternatives, giving millions of people access to more fulfilling lives, loving relationships, stronger families, and productive organizations. Alison is a sought-after speaker and thought leader amongst people with a desire to live empowered lives. Alison's philosophy and approach is frequently referenced and taught by other authors, speakers, business consultants, and therapists. Well, Alison, thank you so much for having taken up the, seemingly impossible task to understand men.
You're welcome.
And women also, I guess.
Yeah, I didn't think it was impossible when I began. I thought it would take 2 or 3 months to learn everything that was worth knowing about them. Because, I mean, to me, obviously, they were simple and they had no feelings, and I questioned if they had a soul. So, yeah, we would get this done really quickly. 30 years later, I haven't slowed down a bit. I'm still studying them. I'm still learning about them. I'm fascinated by them. And I was wrong about everything I thought. And I'm glad I was wrong. I'm so glad I was wrong.
So they have a soul?
Oh my gosh. And when they show it to you, it's once one man shows you his soul, you can't not see it in every man. It just changes everything.
Okay.
Oh, that's who they are. Yeah.
And how can a woman, get to that point where a man, I guess, allows her to see his soul, and what might be the obstacles of getting there?
Wow, what a good question. So it has everything to do with Sublime, right? And that what's natural for human beings is to pay attention to, what should I say, right? What should I say? What should I do? What should I do? What should I say? What should I, right? I mean, we get caught up in that. And really what has the biggest effect on men is how are we being and how are we listening? So not what are we doing and what are we saying, but how are we being and how are we listening? And one of the things that prevents us from seeing men's souls is that the way we're listening and how we're being as we're listening, they can tell that there's a right answer and a wrong answer. And that they're going to get in trouble for a wrong answer, or they'll get in trouble if they don't give an answer, right? It's not okay for them to be private, which is a big value of men. It's a natural value of men to have privacy and respect privacy, and it's why they don't ask a lot of questions, which women, of course, interpret it as you're not interested in me, and which isn't true. They just think if you want them to know something, you'll tell them, and they're not going to pry. And they actually call it interrogation, that I don't like to be interrogated. So the questions that we ask them at the end of the day or on a date or meeting them, or the whole process of that stuff to them is an interrogation. And they're not going to show you anything because the assumption is that anything I reveal about myself will be used against me. So they literally purposely talk about what isn't important to them. And I don't mean purposely like they strategize to do that. I mean, their instincts have them respond to that it's not actually safe. This will be used against me. And they don't reveal themselves. It's just an instinctual response. And as I started working on embodying the qualities that I value the most, which you can't be anything that you haven't embodied. You can preach about it, you can instruct other people to do it, but you have to have it in your body to be it. So I loved that part of the summit about embodiment. I'm huge on embodiment. And so embodying compassion, where you actually are curious about what it's like for someone to be themselves. And you're just curious. You just are interested. And curious comes from the Greek word that means to care, which no wonder when someone's curious, people feel cared about, right? And although one of the things that people do is they'll ask a question, a curious question, and people get excited, like, oh my gosh, you care. And then the person doesn't wait for the answer. Sometimes we will ask a curious question and then tell the person what their answer is. I bet you're like this, right? You'll never see a man's soul that way. You actually, you know this from reading the Queen's Code. Imaginary duct tape, and you got to listen, and you have to listen about them, not about yourself. Like, do I agree? Am I interested in this? Do I like that? That's all about me. That's actually not listening to the other person, right? But authentically caring, who are you? Who are you? What do you care about? What matters to you? And then if you do that, it doesn't actually take long for men to just ET's heart light, they'll just show you. And I met a man recently, and he's a neighbor, and he just came over for tea, right? And 3.5 hours later, it's like, I can't believe I told you so much. I didn't intend to do that. And I just smiled. I get that a lot.
So
that's kind of a long answer to your question, but thank you for letting me give it.
So listening and being instead of doing things.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, including a natural thing for women. And I'm not talking about hashtag Me Too. I'm talking about the original Me Too, where somebody says something like, I like coffee. Oh, me too, right? Or this is important to me. Oh, me too. And we, as women, that's our connection. Me too, me too. We have these, we can all, yeah, connected. Every one of those Me Too's, to a man is an interruption. And it doesn't take very many of them to just run the train right off the track and they stop talking. So we actually have to suppress our instinctual connect mechanisms, right? For the me too, me too, me too. Wait, I can't hear you.
Yeah, sorry,
Okay.
I just mute myself to keep the sound on your side. But so that is a natural tendency that women then have to want that connection.
Oh, absolutely. It's where our safety lies.
Okay.
We feel connected, we feel safe.
Yeah. And so we're going to look for that also in our relationships with men.
All the time. It's like it's an auto redial. Right? Like, dial again, dial again, dial again, dial again. Are we connected now? How about now? How about now? Oh no, not connected. Get it back connected. And we'll panic about it. And it's one of the things that actually causes our relationships into a downward spiral, because testosterone creates single focus and the need to not be interrupted, and to it's a way that men are at peace. To just be focused is a state of peace. And so we'll keep interrupting the peace in order to connect, and then they get irritated, which causes a bigger disconnect, which has us scramble even more, panicking, all this tension, which is a sure sign of instinct being activated when you feel tense.
Okay.
It would be the opposite of sublime.
Yes, yes. And what would be your advice to women if they feel this desire to connect and be more supportive of the man's need to have this uninterrupted attention and really, well, the listening? How is there a way that women can kind of, I don't know, change the way they are with themselves maybe, or are there ways that maybe the understanding and knowing is already enough? I think for a lot of women who are watching this, it's like, aha, okay, so when I interrupt him, I really piss him off. It makes sense, you know.
Yes.
And it's true that I'm not often listening, and I'm also with my mind elsewhere and so on.
Yes.
Is there something else that you would say, like, yeah, this is a good piece of advice for women to kind of?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of ways I could answer that, and consistent with your topic and looking at who are we being, if you start by, first of all, just thinking, having the thought, oh, he'll come to me when he's ready, right? And it'll be even better, right? A man coming to you to connect is delicious, right? Because what is he focused on? Connecting with you. That's all he's doing, is trying to connect with you when he's trying to connect with you. He's not doing anything else. And that's what makes it so intense and so delicious, right? And then so what do you do meanwhile? Okay, he'll come to me when he's ready to connect. Meanwhile, what could I do to connect with myself? What could I do to embody one of my highest values? To be more loving or more generous or more patient or kind or truthful or congruent or whatever your highest values are. What could I do to feed myself the essence of me? And, oh, I could go for a walk, right? Oh, I could play with my dog. I could call my best friend. I could, right? Because we have people and we have nature and we have activities. I could meditate, right? And then when we're more connected with ourselves, we feel less tense and scared about needing to connect with somebody else. Mm-hmm. And then when he shows up able to connect, we're actually present for connection instead of, oh, finally you're here.
Okay.
Yes, I've been spying on you.
Yes. So yeah, staying close to ourselves in that case, and asking indeed I loved how you say that, or said that, the values, what are my values, and how can I also, I don't know, maybe provide for or take care of myself in this moment, and when he will come, it will be even, better and more delicious than when I kind of force him. Forcing doesn't really work, I guess.
You cannot force connection. You can force an interaction.
Yes.
And one of the things that I can do, one of the things I do when I'm out of sorts, is I wash dishes. And and so I try never to force myself to wash dishes. I let dishes collect. I let them soak in water. I believe in the corrosive power of water. But I let them be there for when I need them. And then I'll go slowly hand wash the dishes, and that rhythmic motion builds oxytocin, which is the bonding hormone. And it then makes me more available to connect. It gives women a sense of well-being, right? So again, it's calming that tension and preparing us to have an even higher quality connection when they're available. And something as simple as that, that's, embodiment. Most of embodiment are things that we do physically that put spiritual qualities literally in our body, where we can feel them. And that's how we know they're there. We can feel them.
Okay. Yeah, that's very beautiful advice. And you said earlier that, yeah, the sublime woman, or that you have, you know, learned things about women or how women are sublime through men.
Yes.
How, what, enlighten me.
You want to know about that? Well, the most amazing thing, so I didn't have trouble with women. I had trouble with men. So I never intended to learn anything about women, except when I first started studying men, the first thing I had to do was I had to learn to listen. So I had to learn to stop talking, don't me too, don't but what about, don't, are you sure really? I don't think so. I don't agree with that. I had to learn how to not do any of that and actually listen and be curious. And the first thing that surprised me was I thought men would talk about sports and work. And when I learned to listen, they stopped talking about sports and work because those are safe subjects and they talk about those things when it's not safe to talk about what really matters. And it's funny, for example, men who really care about their work don't talk about it. Men who really care about sports don't talk about it unless someone has proven they're safe to reveal that passion. So anybody who's just regularly talking about sports and work, they don't have a lot invested in sports and work. And and so the safer that I became for men to express themselves, the more they started talking about what they were passionate about. And what were they passionate about? Women. They wanted to talk about women and connecting with women and sex with women and being admired and supported by women. And as they were describing women, I had never met any woman who was like what they were describing. They were saying all these things that were amazing and wonderful about women. And like, I haven't met these women. Where do I meet these women? And it took me a while to figure out that they were talking about qualities of being, and they were talking about extraordinary qualities of being, noble qualities of being, pure, loving qualities of being. And they used words like magical, and how a woman can walk into a room and change everything. She has this magical ability. They use the phrase unicorns in the forest. Yes.
Now I feel like this tough man sitting on the couch and
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And the man who said femininity is color in a black and white world, right? It's one of the chapters in Keys to Kingdom. This one man, he just took my breath away. He said, we were talking about providing, and he said, I want to do everything for my wife that I can do so that she can be everything I could never be.
Wow.
Yes, men think of themselves as insensitive, but they're not. They're really sensitive to how are you being, and how you're being congruent with what you're saying. It's called sincerity. And so if how you're being is nasty, but you're saying nice words, if how you're being is compassionate and loving, and you're hitting them over the head with a brick, like being very direct about this doesn't work and I can't live with it, they're fine with that. They can take the most direct hits of what we would call a criticism, and they feel where you're coming from, and it feels like love. Wow, you really care about me that you would tell me that, because that's where it is coming from. And I love how men are sensitive. I mean, I think it's one of the yummiest things about them. And yeah, so they started talking about women and women's compassion and women's support and women's belief in them, how much it means to them. And And they also would talk about what hurts, like when a woman assumes the worst in a man, how crushing that is, or when, and they run into this a lot, when they're expected to act like the worst man that that woman has ever encountered. Mm. She's on guard for him to be like that. Mm. And that to them is very confusing. They don't get it. They don't get why we can't see that they're not that man. To them, it's like, well, just look at what I do, right? Look at what I do. Look how long I've been here for you. Look at what I give, what I've asked for, what I've never asked for. Don't you have enough evidence yet that I'm not that guy? And yeah, I mean, they've just, I could go on and on at the things that they've expressed about how they're affected by a woman's greatness, how profoundly they're affected by that, and how profoundly crushed they are by our pettiness or by our lack of being in the present, right? That we don't even see them, which is why so much of our curriculum is about the ability to see and hear a man, that he's, instead of through the filters that we normally have that prevent us from knowing who they are, or what led me to believe they had no feelings and no souls and that they were shallow, when they're exactly the opposite.
So what would be a a direct way for a woman, or a simple way for a woman to embody that and to access that, sublime, nobler, purer side inside of herself? Please tell me there's a quick fix.
A quick fix. Well, actually, so there's I would tell you in general, and then how to figure out for you specifically. So, like I was saying before, right? It's all about embodiment, right? So we have access to and belief in these extraordinary spiritual qualities or values, but you can't be them here on earth if you don't get them in the physical body, because this is a physical realm. And how you know that you have embodied something is that you can find it in your body. In other words, it's a feeling that has a location, and the feeling might get bigger or smaller, but it's in a particular location. And it's not like emotions, which zoom around the body, right? Like, right? There's a place that you feel love. There's a place that you feel compassion, that you feel patience. And it isn't necessarily the same place in every person, but you have your place. And then there are common things that people need. And those common things that people need will cause us to be left with those feelings. So, for example, one of the things that changes my life, my perspective, my reality, who I can be, is to walk up that road with my dog. And it doesn't take that far. Ideally, it's 20 minutes up and 20 minutes back or more. But if I have to, I can get it done in 15 minutes up and 15 minutes back. And it helps that Buck's there, and it helps if Buck brings a ball, because then we play soccer and kickball. And he's so athletic and acrobatic, he'll like twist and turn and fly through the air to catch a ball, which makes me laugh, right? And then I'm here in the Rockies, right? So the mountains are stunning, and the air is a caress, and the fields and the horses. I have about 50 horses just within a very short range of my home, including my 3. And just doing that, right? I come back literally filled up, literally left with feelings the feeling of patience, the feeling of love, the feeling of compassion, the feeling of joy, the feeling of gratitude, the feeling, even a feeling of focus, that I can focus, I can concentrate, a feeling of energy. I mean, it is one of the most valuable 40-minute trips that I can make to cause myself to be all these qualities, including the quality of freedom, which is my highest value. All of these qualities, I'm left with feeling that. And it's the nature, it's the movement, it's the playfulness, it's the vista, the view, the peace, all those things. So for every person, man or woman, that's the question, is to think about what are your highest values? What are the feelings that you most want to embody? You want to be that person. And then just ask yourself, okay, well, what leaves me with that feeling? You could say what gives me that feeling. But the important thing is to distinguish between I feel it when I'm doing it versus I feel it afterwards. So the importance is that you're feeling it afterwards. You're left with that feeling. That means you now have the capacity to bring joy to the laundry, to bring love to a tough conversation, right? Because you're filled with it. And that to me is the real trick. And one of the things that defeats us all the time is we come to our relationships trying to get these feelings from our relationships.
Yeah.
Instead of come to our relationship, I call it a full swimming pool. Like that really life is magical when we're overflowing. When we fill ourselves to overflowing and we're effortlessly loving and or clear or patient or whatever those qualities are, that it occurs as effortless when you're overflowing because you did what it took to put it in your body, whether it was sleeping or dancing or meditating or playing music or talking to your best friend or any of those things.
Yeah, and that takes it home. That takes it indeed. That brings it again back into the body. It gives a sense of agency also, and I think it touches upon such a crucial point in relationships and, well, I think in life in general. You know, the tendency to go and look for validation and for all these qualities that we desire in the outside world instead of maybe finding out how we can provide them.
Instead of bringing them, we try to figure out how to get them.
Yeah.
Them.
Yes. Yeah.
We got it backwards.
Yeah. Thanks, Alison. Now we know.
There's a line in an Ed Sheeran song. I just love it. That as human beings, we either radiate or drain. Yeah, all the magic comes from radiating.
Yes. Okay. Well, we don't have that much time left. Okay. Dilemma. I mean, I would like to just a little bit talk about a bit more, I would say then, about what the men then need, you know, and I heard like admiration and support, and I heard also, well, they love to provide. And that I know that, I mean, from the Queen's Code, I know that was for me an eye opener. I think I knew it somehow, you know, it's kind of maybe explained in the Hollywood movies or maybe it is kind of represented in the maybe classical gender roles a little bit, but not in the way that you kind of explain it. So yeah. Yeah, would you talk a little bit about those two elements? I think they're so beautiful.
I'm happy to. So this is where we get really tangled up in the difference and often opposing instincts between male and female. And because women are also providers, and it's a human instinct to provide. You can see it in very small children, the desire to provide. And another instinct meaning we're compelled to do it, it's not thoughtful at all, is to decide what other people need. So we don't ask, what can I provide for you? That's not a natural question. We look as if we had no language. So this predates language in humans. And we decide. We often are like, well, what would I need in that situation? We're self-referential. And this is where we make the biggest mistake with men, because often with another woman, what I would need is more likely to be what she would need. She's upset. I'm going to put my arm around her, right? Or, I'm going to touch her in some way. I'm going to soothe her. And that'll often work. But our instincts are so different in many cases, and we can tap into this when we pay attention to if we're in hunting mode, if we're focused, if we're zeroed in on a result. If I'm frustrated, do not touch me. At the very least, you're slowing me down from where I want to get to. But given the hormones in a man's body when he's frustrated, it actually causes an uncomfortable feeling. It's like a stinging, and he'll go, ah, like that, because it's like a hot iron. But we'll do that. We'll provide for them what we think they need from our perspective. And another thing that messes it up is that we are compelled to provide to help someone when we think they can't do it. So when we think that's too heavy or they're carrying too many things, here, let me take that, right? And so when a man offers to provide something for us, here, I'll carry your suitcase, we think he's offering because he thinks we can't do it. And we're insulted, right? And we'll go into proving mode, and we'll have this reaction of, I can do that myself, right? Instead of, it's like what the husband said, I want to do for my wife everything I can do so she can be what I can't be. They would rather we stood there being happy, being magical unicorns in the forest while they loaded the suitcase. We don't even have to do something that appears valuable, right? Like, oh, okay, I'll get busy doing something while you're doing that. No, just stand there and smile at me. And so we take offense at men trying to provide for us. We take insult. And instead of that, what if, and this is what it took me so many hours and hours of listening, what if to them it's an honor to provide? And if we're honored that they would provide for us, oh my gosh, now it's radioactive. Now I'm honored to provide for you, and you're honored that I'm honored to provide for you. Wow, right? It's like being desired by someone you admire. Oh my gosh, right? So being receptive, right? We have to clear out all our junk, all our assumptions that keep us from being receptive. And it's one of the most attractive qualities in a woman. It's without it, the other most attractive qualities just become frustrating. We talk about this in our Making Sense of Men book, and it's what allows what I call the upward spiral, right? It's what keeps the energy flowing, the connection flowing, the giving. It allows a man to be in that provide part of his instincts, instead of when he's not received, he has to revert to protection. Protection will trump provide. And yeah, men need to be received. They need to be received, which means we have to work on our ability to be receptive. And that's another thing to get filled up with, right? When are you naturally receptive? Oh, after I took a walk in the woods. Oh, after blank, right? It's one of the most important things we can embody is receptivity.
Well, Yeah, that's so powerful, and that's so it seems simple enough, let's say. I mean, it's yeah, it's a matter of surrendering and allowing that to happen. But of course, that
Yeah,
might not be
which
easy.
is different than people hear surrender and allowing, and they confuse it with collapsing your space, not having boundaries, allowing yourself to be run over, taking for granted. Don't ever accept something that dishonors you, ever. They don't even want you to. They don't want you to. And boundaries where you're truly honoring yourself creates more admiration and respect and love on their part.
Yeah, so I like the word, using the word surrender as a kind of an active
Yes.
way to surrender. I think it doesn't indeed necessarily mean that, but thank you for clarifying that. I think that's very important.
Yeah, I know how I could tell how you used it. It's how most women hear it. No way am I ever going to do that. I'll get walked all over and they'll take advantage of it. No, there's a well, in one of our courses in being extraordinary as a woman, where we talk about being sublime, even though we don't use that word, we call the front of the hand and the back of the hand. So they go together. The front of the hand is receiving and the back of the hand is boundaries. And you cannot be a great receiver if you don't have great boundaries. And you can't have great boundaries if you're not a great receiver. And then I think it's all so funny that, you know, queens on parade receive, boundary, and receive literally means to let in, and boundary means to not let in. And you have to have strength and graciousness in both.
Yeah, and I think it's of course, and there's women's experience and past experiences, as you said before, that we bring into new relationships and even, you know, longer term relationships. And I guess one of the challenges is for women to deal with the hurt from the past. And I don't know, do you have some words of advice of how women can kind of overcome that and indeed the experiences of when the boundaries were overstepped and to heal that in a way? It's also a kind of a heavy word, I know, but
yeah. So healing, I like the word restoration. Wholeness is important to me. We have a whole course called Extreme Freedom. That's 6 different tools to restore yourself. But our entire curriculum, and you know this from the Queen's Code, is healing. The more you can illuminate what really happened, every time you can see, oh, wait, I concluded that about myself based on what I thought happened. But what I thought happened was assuming that he did what he did for the same reasons a woman would do what she does, and he didn't. He did it for a completely different reason. There's a really sweet reason. Okay, well then it's just like a house of cards. It just crumbles. So therefore, what I thought was true about me, that I'm not enough, right, or there's something wrong with me, it never happened, right? It's like telling women, there's so many things we conclude about ourselves from being ignored. Right? That I'm not enough, and what's wrong with me that I'm being ignored. Well, when you find out you've never been ignored.
No.
Ever. You've never, ever been ignored by a man. They're not capable of it. It's not how they're put together. They don't have ignoring in them. Unless that's the only thing they're doing is actively ignoring you, which actively ignoring you is paying a whole lot of attention. So, just a simple thing like that, to find out you've never been ignored. Their brains aren't wired to do it. A woman's is, men's aren't. So everything I thought wasn't good enough about me, that was why he was watching TV and ignoring me, or eating his dinner and ignoring me, or playing a video game and ignoring me, or whatever it was I thought he was doing and ignoring me. Wow. So there's a lot of things that naturally unravels when the cause and effect, it turns out to be false.
Mm-mm.
And so that's one of the things I love. And that's what happened to me by studying men. That the hurt that I had that had me think they had no souls, it just disappeared. Just.
And now you look like, I mean, you're radiating. I mean, I think that, yeah, all the women who are watching you are like, oh, yes, let Alison guide us. She has figured something out. Mm.
Yeah, I learned it from them, and I think like my dad, I think like an engineer, right? So taking the radio apart, only it was human beings, and yeah, and this last year has been especially instructive since Greg passed like 15 months ago. I've had a lot of new experiences. I ended up single. What the heck? I wasn't planning on that. And so I've learned so many more things that I hadn't been exposed to for almost 30 years of marriage. And yeah, life is good. Life is good, and God loves me. Yeah.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. It's really, yeah, touching and yeah, very inspiring. And yeah, I think God loves you, and I feel the love through you. So feel very touched. Okay, shall we? Well, let's.
I know I'm not a meditator. Do you want to close with a prayer or anything for everybody?
Sorry. Can you?
Do you want to close with a meditation or a prayer for people?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I can do that.
That's your domain.
Yeah. Let's do that.
Okay.
Beautiful. So let's close our eyes. And I invite you to center in your heart space. Your heart space not necessarily being your physical heart, but your spiritual heart, which you can find in the middle of your chest, a little bit to the right. And just allow yourself to sink in that space, right here, right now. Deepening your breath. And just creating some openness, some relaxation. And feeling, even if it's just a glimpse, but this source of compassion, of love, of being this sublime woman. And as you feel that these qualities are buzzing, radiating inside of you, feel how they spread throughout your entire being. And I invite you to localize a part of you that maybe has been hurt by men in the past. Or any emotion, maybe sadness or anger, frustration that is here present when you think about that. And that you can localize in your body. And for a moment you can be with that, feel the sensations. And maybe there's some memories that come, some thoughts that come. Just observe that, feel that, without getting lost in the story. And as such, you accept that these things have happened, These parts are there. And with the next inhale, I invite you to bring these parts, the hurt, the sadness, into your heart, into this center of sublime womanhood. And hold it there for a moment. And as you exhale, you feel how the qualities, the hurt, the sadness can be transformed just a little bit as your heart, as your compassion, as the love radiates and flows through and back into that part. So inhaling and bringing the qualities into your sublime heart and allowing for this alchemical, energetic, beautiful process to happen. And on the exhale, allowing it to travel back to that part and throughout your entire body. And just closing by feeling grateful for this beautiful invitation for us all to come together as women, supporting, inspiring, loving each other from this genuine, authentic, vulnerable space, ready to grow, to forgive, and to love. And whenever you're ready, you can open your eyes again.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Alison.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much. I mean, there's a gift for me in that. Thank you. Special.
Yes. Okay. Would you like to let the women know how they can work with you and what you have, to offer? You have so many beautiful, offerings.
I would just say come to understandmen.com.
Okay.
Or they can put in AlisonArmstrong.com. They'll get to the same place and everything is there.
Okay. Beautiful.
Thank you, Lane.
Thank you, Alison.